piss hard.
Yes, I did.
Walking broccoli.
I swear to God, it was like I turned on a fire hose.
It's the return of the Brock.
I was trying not to wake up my wife, but I don't know if that happened or not.
I entered my room, and my wife was exiting my room, and I scared her.
My wife's out. Like, she's fucking zonked. And she's Sister Wives is on.
Uh-oh.
Quite good.
Attack warning.
Attack warning? Is it for real? Attack warning's for bloody real.
Live from Colorado Springs, the Drop Culture Podcast.
Want to confirm, is this an exercise? Roger, copy. This is not an exercise.
Come on, quick, get down. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome, everybody, to the Dropped Culture Podcast. This is that podcast where we pick up that piece of pop culture you forgot about or missed, shine it up real nice, and cram it in your ear holes. And today, Mr. Brock, oh, by the way, I'm Dan. This is Brock.
I'm Brock.
That's him. And today, let me tell you about this beautiful, beautiful movie we have.
What is it?
It's called Exorcist II, Lamont, you big dummy. No, it's not. It's called Exorcist II, the Heretic.
Wait, I mean, what is a heretic?
Burn at the stake! A heretic is like a person that goes against like whatever the beliefs are, right? Like they're
right.
Yeah. I don't know who was the heretic in this. I don't get it. Nor do I care to ever explore that portion of who was the heretic.
So weird, though. This movie actually exists. Heretic, the definition is a person believing in or practicing religious heresy.
Yes, right. Heresy. Yeah, heretic. That's what I said. I said, but those were better words.
Well, that was the Google definition. You know what?
Thanks,
Google's pretty
Google.
smart. Thanks, Google.
You're a smart
Okay,
one.
Google.
So
Please help me.
let's get into this. Exorcist II. First of all, Exorcist, of course, was a book by William Peter Blatty.
Brilliant.
What was that, like early 70s, right?
71, 72?
Yeah. I think 71. I think you're right. And then it was made into a movie in 1973 and was amazing. Was one of the scarier movies that I've ever seen as a kid. I watched that movie when I was 7 years old.
Incredible movie. Incredible.
It was just one of the scariest things I'd ever seen. And we'll get into why a little bit later, because I'm going to tell you how this movie completely ruins that movie. But is almost an okay movie if it was just something else.
Well, I really think part two great idea, horrible execution. That's really where, it failed. It was the execution. It was the constant rewrites. It was a whole bunch of shit. The Exorcist was in your face. It really did scare the shit out of you. It had so many different aspects of it, but yet it was really on the surface. I mean, that's stupid to say that in that contradictory way, but for real though, The Exorcist is one of those movies where you have to look beyond, but yeah, you really don't have to be scared of shit. This one, they said, guess what? You're gonna have to look beyond. You got to guess on a lot of this shit.
Right. Well, I think, and we'll get into this, I think one of the things that this movie's tried to do, and sort of did, is world building, where it wasn't needed for what the other movie was. You know what I mean? And that's cool. They built that story out, I guess, in like a story that kind of spanned lots of time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
So I don't hate what they were trying to do. And apparently there was the first draft, the first screenplay script was like, most people who read it were like, this is pretty good. This is going to be great. Now, here's what happened. John Boorman, who directed this film, also rewrote it. The script for this movie was rewritten 5 times.
Well, I did read that he was actually in consideration to direct the first one. But he said, nope, I'm going to direct Zardoz.
Perfect.
That's all I got to say. Imagine a world where John Boorman actually directed the first Exorcist.
No.
Nope.
Because we would have had this movie or something.
Right.
And there were some good things in this movie. There's like some good thoughts. Let's put it that way. But again, I just felt like it could not been an Exorcist movie at all.
Well, let me put it in the way that Martin Scorsese said it.
Mm-hmm.
He says, because he is a champion for the film. You know what I mean? He knows.
Yeah, he's like one of 2 people that like this movie a lot.
Really? Yeah. In the kind of in the industry.
Yeah.
I guess besides Tarantino and shit,
and
right?
Current hipsters, yes.
Right. He said, and I'm just gonna do a really quick kind of phrase of what he said. He says the picture asks, does great goodness bring upon itself great evil? Now you got to think about that. That is a hell of a question to ask. If you're inherently super great, does that attract the super bad?
Sure. I get that conversation. It's like, did Batman create the Joker?
Right.
Do people in mass keep attacking the city because there is a Batman or a Superman or a whatever comic book character?
He even alludes to this going all the way back to the Bible, which it does, to the book of Job.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of his movies, so you really think the ultimate good does attract the ultimate bad, and that's what this movie is. Cool, great, awesome premise. Put it together, you're gonna have a killer movie, But then you add in a couple of other things that this movie did, and you're gonna have shit.
Okay, so first of all, that exact thing that Pazuzu, and we're going to get into the story, guys, I promise, but that Pazuzu came after Reagan because she was good is what completely invalidated the first movie. When I was a kid, what scared me as a kid was that anybody could get possessed by a demon. That was inherently the scariest thing about The Exorcist.
Yeah,
that caused
it could
me
happen
for
to
a
anybody.
year to, when I turned off the lights to my bedroom, jump in my bed and pray to God that I didn't get possessed by a demon for like a year, dude. I honestly think that may be The Exorcist, because I didn't come from a religious family, but I think that it caused me to look at religion. Like, I read the Bible when I was like 11 or 12, all the way through. And like look into that stuff because I was like, oh, hey, I don't want to get possessed by a demon.
Yeah, no shit, right?
So
I think the first time I saw
reason why she was that way. Okay. And at no point throughout this movie, let me just be very straightforward before we get into this. Is this movie scary?
No.
Not at all.
There's not any scary aspects. It really isn't. It should not even be considered a horror movie. It should be considered more of a drama.
Yeah.
Even at the end, it's not scary. There's nothing scary about this movie.
Nope.
It should not be classified as horror. It should be more science fiction, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, what's really crazy about this, to me, that hits a very personal point, is that the way they, Father Lamont, which is the titular character, the main guy, that he refers to as these people are already on Earth. It's a new step in consciousness. It's kind of like that deal. But yet he was really alluding to, like, say, autism and special needs people,
Sure.
which is kind of crazy. And like I said, that hits a very personal note to me. But to see that represented on screen, that is a huge freaking deal
Sure.
to me.
Well, especially at that time in, what's 1977?
Right. 1977. And it's not Ellen Burstyn, but Nurse Ratched. She's, they have that in the script where they're saying, hey, you know what? We have all these new advancements. The shit has not changed since 1977. I can tell you that for a fucking fact that it hasn't. But yet the narrative was out there. The narrative was in even Saga of the Swamp Thing comics.
Right.
Abigail Arcane actually worked at a place like that.
Yeah.
So
and
I think it's been
of Louise Fletcher, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is having that conversation back in the 70s, there's so many different things that I think, and it's weird that every so often, so many different things kind of hit on the future, but don't really embellish it as much as it should.
Sure.
And I think that was one of them, and to make Reagan like a healer, like, what's his name? What was James Earl Jones?
Kumoku or Kumiko?
Yeah.
Kumite?
Kumuku or something.
Yeah, I believe his name was Kumite. Yes, let's go with that.
Kumite. Kukumo. Yes.
Kakumo, yeah, that's it.
Why didn't I get that?
Kumite is more fun.
To me, this makes this movie more personal.
Okay.
Even though, yeah, it's a crappy movie, but it does kind of hit in a weird spot for me. And to see the little girl in the middle of it, kind of change a little bit. And it was still, she was like, "What's the matter with you?" And, the little girl was like, she's like, "What's your problem?" Like, what the fuck, But that's still the exact same thing that happens today.
Sure.
I think a lot of the kids are overlooked. But having Reagan or Kokumo or even the woman at the very beginning that was a healer, added into the narration is a pretty abstract kind of a concept. And I'm saying that in the way that they could be almost like superheroes, the next evolution into something.
Well, and I think, as I told you, shitty Exorcist sequel bones for a cool movie. You know what I mean?
Doesn't need to be Exorcist.
Doesn't have anything to do with the Exorcist, in my opinion. You know what I mean? That's just for me. Like, if this was not Exorcist, like, let's just say they called it the Heretic, which apparently means nothing.
Yeah,
is the demon
you
the
call
heretic?
it
Whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And somebody will probably tell me, no, it's the priest, or I don't care.
The whole premise behind the priest being like, I'm unworthy. I get it.
Yeah.
But, to explore the capability of the human consciousness or even some otherworldly power that has nothing to do with demonology or anything like that is a pretty powerful concept, to think that, the human spirit can actually overcome what we're at right now, which fucking still hasn't, you know what I mean? I really, it's a crazy thought to think that, like, say, Kakumo and Reagan McNeil and again, the woman at the very beginning, the Spanish woman or Puerto Rican woman, whatever, she even says she's a healer, you know, and Reagan actually heals, but yet even they talk about Kakumo being the one person that could heal the locust plague.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, you know what? These are like modern day, like almost superheroes in a way.
Sure.
You know, they don't have special powers, but yet they do. You know, they're not flying.
Right. It's more of an altruistic power of healing,
right?
You know, totally. But I do disagree. I mean, there's some definitely demonology brought into it. Pazuzu,
yes,
specifically. I mean, that's a Mesopotamian demon.
Actually,
it was the king of the demons of the wind.
You're right, and that was an ancient Mesopotamian religion. He was a brother of Humbaba and son of the god Hanbi.
Yes.
He also represented the southwestern wind, the bearer of storms and drought. Right. So during whenever it was very rainy, he represented a locust swarm. Okay. You know, I did have to research and think, is Pazuzu real? But yes, he was. Yeah, I mean, he really
probably
did.
not. He was made up to make, you know, to explain.
Yeah, he was a religious god, so you know, yeah. But I mean, again, I think like you said, I think there was the bones of a tremendously badass movie, but the execution was put in the hands of a 12-year-old or something, you know. It's like, hey, tell this story, but use a red crayon only.
Well,
what the fuck?
I think it's just that, like, I would like to see what the original script looked like that Linda Blair said. So Linda Blair's in this movie, in case you didn't know. She was also in The Exorcist. She plays the titular character that's being...
Reagan McNeil.
Well, I guess technically the titular character would be the priest.
Yeah.
But yes. But she was like done acting at this point. And she didn't want to come back for a second movie. And nobody involved with the first movie wanted to make a second movie at all. But they came to her with a script. Like, she was getting ready to go to veterinarian school.
Yeah.
And she was 17. At this point, you know what I mean?
And she was already into drugs and everything like that too, which is crazy.
I don't think at that time.
I think during this, she was during this movie, she was in the throes of her drug use.
Oh, okay.
She was pretty proud of only being 20 minutes late one time.
Well,
so because she was all fucked up.
If you had to deal with this director, you would be fucked up too.
Yeah.
And I believe this was also at the time when Richard Burton was an alcoholic.
Yep.
So there's that. But
she jumped at the chance to work with him.
That's what really sold her on coming on, was when they told her that they had Richard Burton, and she said the first script was superb. And then they rewrote it 5 times, to the point where it's hard to tell, apparently, whether Richard Burton was reading off cue cards because the script changed so often, or if it was because he was drunk.
Right.
But apparently, about halfway through the movie, he just started showing up drunk.
Who wouldn't at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just walking onto a soundstage and not really putting anything into it. You know what I mean?
I'm going to stare stoically.
I mean, at this point, he's got a divorce coming on, which is like another divorce from Liz Taylor. She's always on the set. He's all fucking drunk. Linda Blair's like not even showing up on time.
So, and they're rewriting everything for our listeners that may not know who Richard Burton is. What would you say is like a key role where people might remember him from?
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? That's for me. But he was also in, what was it? Another big one. Who is it for you? What movie is for you?
I just know him from old Shakespeare stuff, to be honest. Right. That's what I remember him from. That's what he did. But But yeah, like you said, I think the biggest one probably is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Incredible movie.
Yeah.
Just absolutely crazy. It's like a shit show of fucking weird older people playing.
That's a
playing
great
bullshit.
play. I've read the play as well.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, but it's crazy as shit.
What was oh
I was
my
just
God.
trying to get something that people would maybe recognize, because he was in a lot of movies, and a lot of them, like I think his first movies did pretty well, and then he had like a stretch where he made a bunch of shitty movies. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
the other one that I was trying to think of was Alexander the Great. Like I think that was one of the movies that like he like didn't do so well. You know what I mean? But that was one of the ones that did do well. Maybe, I don't know, but I've seen that movie. It's pretty good.
Right.
But he was in like everything in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I mean, he was a well-respected stage actor.
Yes.
Which a lot of people really, really, really thought that he was great. Of course, you can kind of see that. And even the homeless people in Scrooge were like, oh my God, they mistook Bill Murray for Richard Burton.
Right.
He's a you know?
And he is our titular character. He is the big dummy himself.
He's a main one.
Lamont.
Father Lamont. I mean, a great actor. Come on. What's her name? Nurse Ratched. She just came off.
Louise Fletcher.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo. Louise Fletcher just came off of the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
One Flew.
Nest.
Right.
Yep.
So you got to think, Louise Fletcher's like, damn, I did pretty good. Why not hop on this fucking, Exorcist movie? I could do good.
I'm just going to rewind just one little click back to Richard Burton, because I do realize the most important thing that he's done. He has a Fall Guy credit.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Done.
You know who he played in
If
Fall
he was
Guy?
in the Fall Guy, Richard Burton.
He did.
That was a good fucking guess.
Yeah, it was.
I'm like, holy shit, he was actually himself. But I mean, okay, you got Linda Blair, and Linda Blair, she, after The Exorcist, I don't really remember how many great movies that she did.
Roller Boogie, come on, man. No, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, let's just go through the cast real quick. I mean, we've talked
touched on
extensively.
a couple of them,
Yeah, extensively about like just the impetus of the actual movie itself.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, I mean, you had a great cast. Come on, you got to think that you had Richard Burton, Linda Blair, Louise Fletcher, Max von Sydow, which was in the first one.
Yeah,
he actually came back to film extra scenes, right?
Yeah.
Kitty Wynn, which I don't think she's a great actress, but I mean, she was in the first one.
Yeah.
Which was kind of weird. Then you got James Earl Jones, right?
How can you go wrong with James Earl Jones?
For real, right? Ned Beatty, which Ned Beatty was in another Niels Bohrman movie, or John Boorman movie, the Squeal Like a Pig Boy.
Deliverance.
Deliverance.
Ned Beatty's wife was in this movie too.
Who?
Ned Beatty's wife.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, they did.
Belinda Beatty.
Yeah, I think they did 3 movies total together. But yeah, while we were talking about that though, you're right. John Boorman was just coming off of Deliverance as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
huge
movie. And he's done some movies that I like. Deliverance was well done. He did Excalibur, I believe. You know what I mean? So there are some good movies that he's done. This ain't one of them. So there's that. But yeah, James Earl Jones, dude. Psh. What?
I mean, this was before Conan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, he was a badass. You know, Conan came out in what, 1980? 1979 it was filmed or some shit like that. Conan the Barbarian, the
Yes.
good one,
The good.
you know. Not the other deuce that we covered. So I mean, you do have quite a bit of really great talent on this movie, set designers, everything like that. But yet it was like, hey, let's shoot this like a $5,000 low budget movie that we'll make in our camper.
I don't know set designers well enough. I don't know that industry well enough, like to know. I mean, I know there's certain names that I recognize, but I did not think the sets of this movie were very good at all.
It fucking sucked. Here, we got to put a pin in it because I got to take a quick squeege. God damn it! I'm so sorry, man.
Yeah. Right.
What time?
43:50.
God damn. So sorry. That's a douche move. I gotta go to pee like every 10 minutes.
Oh, it's all good.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get into the movie. Again, watching this movie as much as I did in the last 2 weeks. How many times did you watch it, Dan?
Just twice.
Twice? Mm-hmm. All the way through?
Oh, yeah.
One sitting?
Yeah. Well, sort of. So let me tell you, the first time that I watched this, I thought, man, I'm just being very patient. Like, it seems really long. I was like, because I was watching it on the computer the first time, and when you pause it on the computer, it tells you automatically how much time's left, you know? And I was like, there's 45 minutes of this movie left. I'm going to need, like, provisions.
Right. I think you need, food and drink, and you need to stop it, because I think everybody that's ever watched this movie has stopped it at that point, because I did too, and was like, what the fuck, man? I got to get up and like stretch or some shit.
I'm like,
wait
how
a
is
minute.
This still on? Why is this still, what? How did this is not over yet?
It's so crazy though, because it does not keep your interest. You know, I think by the time Father Lamont takes his trip to wherever,
Africa
or
Congo
some shit like that. Yeah, wherever the cliffs of Dover are.
Yeah.
It's weird because, like, at that point you're like, huh, well, maybe it might be getting good, and then you're like, no, it's not. Because you get to see the whole backtrack and everything like that.
Right.
And then finally, when you get to the very end of it, it's like, shit. Thank God they have a red title screen at the very end, you know, to wake you up. You know, you're like, oh, that's fucking bright. You know, I'm ready to fucking party again, you know. But honestly, I mean, you shorten this movie by probably 30 minutes. You might have a good narrative, or you extend it by another hour. You could really dive into it, maybe add in the extra stuff. I don't know. It could go either way. This 2-hour runtime, I just don't really think works.
It didn't work out for this movie, that's for sure.
No.
But we definitely don't need like the Snyder cut.
No. Maybe the original cut might be pretty good, because Borman actually did recut it several times during the theatrical run.
Right.
But you got to think
of what release the Borman cut.
Right. You got to think though, what movie came out at the same time? Star Wars.
Yeah.
So you put that out there, and everybody's like, Star Wars is bullshit, right? We're going to have a sequel to the fucking most successful scary movie of all time, right? And then Star Wars comes out and it's like, fuck you. And these guys are getting chased out of McDonald's or some shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're like not even surviving. The execs are like, what the fuck? Everybody's laughing. I tried to find merit in this movie and really try to dive into it, because I did watch it probably a total of about 5, maybe 6 times,
Okay.
and only once really all the way straight through. It was mainly on, a week ago every single day.
Okay.
In my office, and I watched the very beginning so many times, but the ending is what I didn't watch that much, because every time I got to it, I'd be like, you know what? I need to start over. You know what? I need to start over. And I tried. And one night, fatefully, I actually sat through it and was like, okay, that's how it ends. Besides all the trouble and everything like that it has, getting into the movie, getting into how everything works, the basic synopsis of this movie, and this is how lame that they're even putting effort into the synopsis for it. The IMDb synopsis says a teenage girl, once possessed by a demon, finds that a still lurks within her. Meanwhile, a priest investigates the death of the girl's exorcist. What the fuck? They don't give you anything,
Well, I mean, they're not wrong.
No, not at all. They put it all out on the surface, but they don't really give you anything. You're like, oh, that's basic. Is this a full moon feature?
We should only be so lucky.
Yeah, right. Shit, if it was a Dangerous Toys movie, it'd probably be better than this shit. Dangerous Toys.
Like that band? Wasn't that a band?
I think so.
Yeah.
But it's a movie too. Okay, so we start out in this movie, which is...
Wasn't it Demonic Toys?
Yeah, you're right. God, dummy.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that. The first concert I ever went to, Dangerous Toys opened for Alice Cooper.
Did they come out with like a Jack in the Box or some shit?
No, I don't really remember them at all. Because there was like lots of girls.
Oh, hey.
And like leather bras, and I was like 14.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't remember if I went to a Black Sabbath show if there was titties around.
That now, however, I will say at both Black Sabbath shows I went to, I enjoyed the Black Sabbath shows, even though there was lots of titties.
Oh. I don't know if I could.
It was all the original band members.
Yeah, you son of a bitch.
Couldn't go wrong. Anyways, that has nothing to do with The Exorcist II.
No, it doesn't. So we digressed. So let's start this movie. Let's start it. Okay. So Father Philip Lamont, basically at the very beginning, is a traveling exorcist, I guess. So he's actually in Brazil trying to, which is so weird because they don't really let on that he's doing even a exorcism until he like stops. They're indoors.
Right.
Why are all exorcism indoors anyway? Why can't they bring it outside? So he's in there, and all of these Brazilian people are just like screaming, and there's so many of them that it's packed tight in there. And the woman's like, "Why me? Why me?" She's like, I can heal the sick. Why is this happening to me? Porque, you know what I mean? And she tips over a whole bunch of candles and then like lights on fire.
Lights her dress on fire.
Oh shit! It's a horrible effect too.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
It was so bad, and he's just standing there not doing shit.
Well,
I don't get it.
And by the time you get to the end of the movie, you're gonna forget that this was even a scene, anyways.
Right. Well, I mean, he doesn't do anything.
Absolutely, he does. He just like stands there and watches her burn.
Right. But yeah, before he even starts the exorcism, or even attempts to walk up and say hi to her. He does ask Father, whatever his name is, Father Karras. No, it's not Father Karras. It's Father whatever his name. What the fuck is his name?
Marin?
Anyway, Father Marin. Yeah, he asked for his help.
Right,
He has that little picture in his Bible, and he's like, "Hey, Father Marin, please grant me the strength to blah blah blah." Right? But yet he still freaks out, and he doesn't even like find a crutch to put out the woman. Right. You know what I mean? But she's a pro at that shit. I mean, he doesn't do anything, and it like freaks him out, right? So then we fast forward a little bit, because that must have just happened technically after she burns herself to death. She actually he actually goes back to
the Vatican.
Right, Vatican City, and he's been assigned by his buddy, because even the cardinal is. Yeah, I know, and it's weird because the cardinal's like waiting until everybody leaves, and he's like, "Hey, man, how's it going, bro?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, they do a secret handshake and shit like that, right?
And this is honestly this is where we're gonna get the heretic portion of this,
right? Because he starts talking to him. He's like, "Listen, I'm unfit. I can't do this anymore. I'm losing my faith." Just like Father Karras from the original one, which this character was actually supposed to be Father Dwyer from the first one, but they couldn't get the original guy because he was busy. Right. Instead of doing this movie, they invented this whole character, and he's like, "I'm not worthy. I can't do this shit. Please take me off of this." He's like, "Why do you disobey?" And it's like, "Because what I just told you, shit. I'm not right for this." And then they kind of get into a little bit of backstory to where I guess Father Marin was basically like their leader of something. You know, he was like a avant-garde priest. You know, he was a little bit different because he believed in Satan.
Well, he kind of explains that the church is, you know, kind of modernizing and doesn't want to admit basically that there is even a Satan.
Right.
And so this Father Marin was more old school.
Right. Know? Yeah. I mean, even him saying, you know, the church is so progressive, you know, they don't even want to hear the word Satan. You're like, what the fuck? I thought Satan was the antithesis of Jesus. What the fuck, right? Yeah, so I mean, he's just like, he's still totally reluctant on taking any kind of job that he's got, but they're saying that Father Karras is going to be
Father Marin.
Yeah, Father Marin is going to be
he's all of his charged for heresy, basically.
Right,
and
right,
he
right,
would be the heretic of this movie, by the way.
Correct, yes. Correct. So they don't believe any of his exorcisms were real. They thought that he was even a Satanist at the very end.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he wasn't. We were buddies, you know?
Right.
We all went to seminary together. He was awesome. He led us. And he even says something like, maybe he was his shoes were too big to fill.
Right.
You know, kind of. And they're like, whatever, you need to go investigate this shit. So
he's going to investigate all of Marin's exorcisms, basically.
Especially the circumstances surrounding his death.
Yes, which
with Reagan McDill in America.
In Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Reagan McNeil in America. God, you could tell I've been drinking.
I don't know who this Father Karras guy you keep talking about is. No, I'm just kidding.
Father Karras is the other dude. He's the guy that he's like, "Come into me," and he jumps out the window. Yeah. We got your mother in here, Father Karras.
Your mother sucks cocks
in hell. Yeah, Dibby, why you do this to me, Dibby? So of course you got the rock and roll priest Richard Burton, right? Shows up at the special school, and which is weird. And I think the building and the offices that they have at this place are fucking badass, right?
Yeah,
Who
for
wouldn't want to
sure.
work in a place like that, right? I mean, that set is the only one that I believe was fucking cool, right? The rest of them was like, what the fuck, right? So Reagan's in there, and she's talking to Nurse Ratched. You know, she's changed professions, you know, so.
Dr. Gene Tuskin.
Yeah, which is, it's like Louise Fletcher is phoning it in at this point, you know. She's the character itself is really like, God, how do you say? Very nonchalant, very like disbelief.
Which I understand
really,
that's her character.
Right. She's a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever.
I think that
know?
Other side, whether it's, I'm not saying it's her acting, I still blame John Borman. He wrote and directed this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't write it, but he rewrote it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good actors that have starred in M. Night Shyamalan movies, but you know what? They suck in those movies. So this is kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan fucking bullshit, right?
William Borman and M. Night Shyamalan together again. But just like those two directors, I'll make a connection. They both made like 2 good movies. Maybe 3.
Maybe 3. Well, whenever we're introduced to her, she's talking to somebody over some headphones that obviously has like a hearing deficiency, right?
Right.
And then you kind of get to see that she's in like a special school, you know, for people with Down syndrome, whatever mental illness that these children have.
Yeah, and she makes the comment that, you know, she just comes here to appease her mom or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
That's what Reagan says. She's like, why are you here? Oh, well, because my mom wants me here. She's like, for real?
You know, I just do this
and
again, to make her feel
right,
better or whatever she says.
Yeah. And Louise Fletcher's like, so your mom's here? You know, wants her to try some like experimental stuff. She's like, you know what? I don't want to. Then Father Lamont comes up, you know, he like shows up out of the blue because that's one thing that this movie suffers from is there's no like transitions for days or anything like that, right?
There's no concept of time until the end.
Yeah, not at all.
In the last 20, maybe 20 minutes of the movie, maybe 30. Now that you have a sense of time and there's something that's going to happen if they don't get to this certain place, you know, before the other, blah, blah, blah. It's the only time you have a sense of time.
Yeah, it took an hour and 45 minutes to even think about time. Right, you know what I mean? So, you know, Reagan McNeil, which is the original character, she was 12 years old in the first movie, right? So she's now, what, 16?
Yep.
Yeah.
Being played by a 17-year-old like they used to back in the day.
Right.
Today,
like an actual age person.
Yeah, if this was a movie today, that girl would have been 32.
Or 40. You never know. But, you know, I mean, we first get introduced to her. She's tap dancing to, you know, the Broadway song, you know, which is weird. You know,
oh, right.
She's wearing number 22, and she's like, da 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 da.
Oh, and they're all done, and the girl's playing the saxophone.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, maybe you can use some extra practice.
I think it's cool that they had some like outside interest for her, but like, where the hell did this come from? And
right,
why is it so intrinsic to this story?
Yeah, was it outside influence, or was it part of the school that she was in?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I think they did that just so they could have the scene later.
Right.
During the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Father Lamont, after she walks out, she sees Father Lamont and it's like, huh, what's he doing here? Asks the other nurse, like, hey, is he here for me? She's like, I don't know. She knows he is. You know what I mean? And so So she's basically like, she's intrigued by it. So she turned down the offer to do whatever new experimental treatment that the doctor wanted to do. Father Lamont goes in and is like, hey, I need to speak with the McNeil girl because I have to investigate what happened.
And that's when the Ratchet
Nurse Ratchet.
in this movie tells him no, like you do more harm than good to her, basically.
Yeah, I'm afraid she would commit suicide or commit bodily harm if she were to do this.
Right.
You know? So she's like, okay. Reagan.
That's when she comes in and says, hey, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Right in front of the priest. And the priest is like, oh, okay, I got to go. And the doctor's like, well, maybe we'll do it tomorrow. Cool. Right? So the next scene is just fucking, this is how it plays with time in a weird way. She's just sitting at the breakfast table in this really swank ass, badass New York hotel, right? Or not hotel, but penthouse.
Sure.
Right. With the woman from the very first one, which was her guardian now, because her mom's on location. They allude to that a little bit later.
Her mom leaves her with her all the time. I don't like
right.
She's like some sort of whatever.
She's a family friend / guardian or whatnot, right?
Right.
So they're watching something about mentalists on TV, bending spoons and shit like that. And she plays that joke, and then she's like,
I can do that too.
And she's like, oh my God, don't be a fool. You believe everything, stupid.
Sure.
You know? and so literally, Sharon's like, Doi. So they end up back at the
a spoon. She had two to make it
right.
Look like, just so you know.
Woohoo. So they end up back at the office, and they are sitting in front of this weird machine, right? Which just looks like two strobe lights without the fucking strobe light enclosure, right?
Right. But what we find out is it's the synchronizer.
It's an experimental treatment
right.
to help match the brainwaves of people, so the brainwaves can show what one person is seeing in their mind, like past and everything like that. Which I don't see how this was more detrimental than being like, "Hey, do you remember anything about this?" You know what I mean?
Come to find out, it just seems like she lies a lot too. She's like, "I don't remember any of that shit."
Yeah, but. Instead of just having a normal conversation, be like, hey, can you tell me about what happened that night? They're like, hey,
let's our
minds.
Go see. What? Okay.
And of course, now this is a little bit of foreshadowing. You do have to notice that Father Lamont has never seen this machine before.
Right.
Cool. Right. So Reagan gets into it, and they do the deeper and deeper shit, which is just fucking lame.
With Nurse Ratchet and her?
Yeah. I don't think I've heard deeper said more times in a regular movie than I have in any porno that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? It's like, match your tone, deeper and deeper. Now, I understand the idea behind it because it's hypnosis. And they're actually... I get it. I mean, it's like the brainwaves matching, but I don't see how if you have brainwaves matching, you're susceptible to suggestion at that point.
It's the cell before it was the cell.
Right. Right. So, which is weird.
All the wires.
Right.
1977 technology, son.
So they get into it, and her and the doctor are basically linked, and she's like, hey, now Father Lamont is going to talk to you, and the nurse is going to be in charge, so you got to bring me in. Nurse Ratchet gets in there. She gets kind of strung into it. Reagan can see the shit, but then all of a sudden Nurse Ratched starts to go into fibrillation, right?
Nurse Ratched being Dr. Tuscan, yes.
Right. She starts totally going into fucking fibrillation. Like she can't breathe. She's like, you know, and again, here's that foreshadowing part. Father Lamont has only seen this machine one time, but yet he looks at her and says, give it to me, put it on me, because I know how to get her back.
And this is where we get the cool overlay picture of the demon possessed, Pazuzu possessed Reagan, like trying to reach into her heart. And then the other Reagan's like putting her hand, they're like playing handsies for a minute.
Right.
I'm like, what is
but
going
you
on?
notice, right. But you notice that she's giving the doctor a Spocker. You know what I mean? Her hand's in a Spock because she doesn't want to touch her nipple, right? She. I noticed that because I thought that was weird. I was like, why is her hand kind of separated on her titty? But it was because she didn't want to arouse her. So they're basically, yeah. Father Lamont is watching possess Reagan with regular Reagan. They kind of flip flop back and forth. They do like the possessed Reagan massages the heart and stuff. It's like reaching in. It's like, hey, how's your father? You know what I mean? Kind of give it the old, handy job. And, Reagan's like, no, stop it. She's mine. They get all that. And then the father just says one thing. It's like, it's something so simple. And then, possessed Reagan's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like,
what?
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus is all. And then she's like, oh, shit. I'm gone.
She was
weird.
real easy to get rid of.
And this is something that I don't understand either, that really is kind of weird, is she tells Dr. Tuscan, or she has Father
Lamont.
Father Lamont tell Dr. Tuscan, you don't want to remember any of this. As soon as the alarm goes up, you're not going to remember. Because she's lost within whatever brain waves, affected her. And the alarm goes off and Reagan wakes up, but she doesn't. So that's before all of this happens, right?
Right.
So, of course, Father Lamont reaches her, says the prayer, or tells the Pazuzu that, God's coming. And he's like, oh, shit. So he leaves. And they're like, but the father fucking remembers everything.
Yeah.
He sees it. He remembers it. Nurse Ratched doesn't, doctor. She doesn't remember anything because they told her not to remember anything. Right. And this is when we get the kind of weird, just absolutely weird stuff. And this is a weird thing to notice too. Reagan is always wearing white.
Yes.
She is always around doves.
Yes.
She even picks up the ceramic doves, and she's got the doves at her house, and which is kind of weird. It's like she is the white to the Pazuzu black.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's the
innocent.
pairing of those two. Yeah, as the dichotomy or whatnot.
Yeah.
So
she's the good.
Of course.
So
of course.
Good that she attracted the bad, as we find out.
Right. Yeah. Right. So basically, Father Lamont gives his most endearing phrase here, which I find very weird that he's looking into the camera at this point, speaking to us directly.
Yeah.
When he says this. Because
not really, but yeah, he kind of is.
Because Reagan's outside drawing a picture for somebody, right?
Right.
She's drawing a face or whatnot. And Father Lamont's like, hey, how do you feel? And Nurse Ratchet's like, I feel just fine. He's like, you don't know what you're up against, right? And then he looks at the camera and says, "It was horrible, utterly horrible, and fascinating." So this is that part where they kind of bring it in and they say that it's so fascinating for these priests to see these demons that sometimes they could get wrapped up in it. Father Marin has actually kind of put that out there to them.
Right.
And said, you need to step back a little bit because this is amazing to know that this exists,
Right.
No matter what it is. Because, nobody else believes in it. Nobody else is saying anything about it, but yet he's on the cusp of this stuff. You know what I mean? So that's part of his teachings. And Father Lamont is like, oh, okay. I can see why he said that. But then, of course, Nurse Ratchet's like, you know what? I got to make my rounds because this whole building that they live in must be some sort of a hospital. And this is their really cool, children's ward that has foam octagons that they can roll,
right.
And hit each other with and shit like that. Right. And, fancy microphones and stuff. So she starts to make her rounds. And the other nurse walks up and is like, "Hey, Reagan drew you a picture." What? So the picture is of a Cherokee-looking Father Lamont surrounded by flames.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're flames or maple leaves or,
well, you
some sort of fauna.
Flames.
Yeah. Now, here's where you get a lot of the Richard Burton acting. Because he says a lot of the things multiple times. Yes. He's like, "Oh, we got to put out the flames. We got to stop the fire. We got to stop the fire." Right. And Nurse Ratchet's like, "Whatever, you fucking old man. You're bullshit." So, he eventually traces that there's a fire downstairs because Reagan has given him a premonition.
Right.
He goes down, and of course, which is weird, it's a box full of dolls that's on fire.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he beats it with like a stick or something.
A crutch.
Yeah.
He has a crutch.
It's a great way to put out a fire, by the way.
He spreads it out. That's all he does. As soon as he hits it the first time, it spreads out.
Yeah, and then isn't it Sharon that comes over and like uses a fire extinguisher?
No, it's the doctor.
Nurse.
Dr. Tuscan.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant.
Tuscan.
Dr. Tuscan, yeah.
Yeah, because Dr. Tuscan is like, "I'll go call the fire department." Because there's a phone downstairs, naturally, right? Instead of finding a fire extinguisher, she's like, "I'm going to go call the fire department." So, of course, in the run down to the storage facility with all the dolls and the crutches and shit like that, Father Lamont throws the actual picture down because he immediately knew what it was.
Right. It
was fire behind him. And this is the funniest part of the whole movie. And you have to watch this multiple times to see this, okay? So Nurse Ratchet looks up Dr. Lamont or whatever,
Tuscan?
Yeah, Dr. Tuscan gets off the phone and she looks up. She sees the picture, but she sees Father Lamont with the flames behind his head. But if you watch that scene when she's looking at him, all he's doing is moving the crutch back and forth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like he's not doing anything. They're like, "Do something." He's like, "Oh." And then they do a close up to show the flames in the right spots, one on each side and one on the top. Yep. And she's like, "Oh shit." But she doesn't acknowledge it though, which I don't understand. Why not?
At no point during this movie does she ever mention it.
Exactly, until like the very end where she sees it and she's like, "Holy shit, it's real." So, of course, I don't know why they had this scene of them coughing in the smoke, Then they're outside and he's like, "Listen,
maybe that was
a
life lesson. Like if you
get
a bunch of smoke, one, it's going to be bad for you to breathe it in. Two, if you use a fire extinguisher, it's going to create a lot of residue that you're probably also not supposed to breathe in." So here's some oxygen, kids.
So, yeah, so they have evacuated the whole facility. All the kids are outside. They're finally clear to go back in. Father Lamont and Dr. Fletcher or whatnot. Is that what her name is? Yeah.
What? No, Louise. That's her real last name. Dr. Tuscan.
Tuscan.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I shouldn't have drank so much.
That's okay.
Okay. So Dr. Tuscan, she's walking around being all modest, and he's like, listen, your work is fucking badass. You need to do this more. You are really reaching into something that nobody really believes and nobody can really see, but you're doing it. I mean, this is awesome. You know?
Yep.
You gotta give yourself a little bit of credit. She's like, hey, listen, I'm
just a tool.
really cool with all this. Yeah, I'm really cool with all this flattery, and don't think I don't like it, but you know what? This is just a tool for me to use, to get to these children, And of course, the father's like, well, whatever. I mean, you're a badass, but just please admit it, Of course, you get that whole, I don't know, the disbelief and everything like that, right?
Sure.
And the next scene is whenever Reagan's at her penthouse. She's asleep, and Pazuzu is actually talking to her, saying, hey, ride on my wings with me, And she wakes up, and she's almost falling off the freaking building because it has no safety rails.
Right. Yeah,
Whose idea
until they show
was
her
that?
again, when she's like, because when Sharon comes up and she's like, oh, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm fine, blah, 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 blah. And if you look around, there's definitely rails around where the whole deal is.
There's rails, but there's spaces that don't have rails. And there's mirrors on the building, mirrors on the floor, mirrors on the steps. That is like one of the most discombobulating freaking... I would not go outside if I lived in that place. I'd be like, this is freaky. You got to put a net around here or something. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to do anything. So again, she's screaming. She actually does scream, and homegirl comes out, her guardian.
Sure.
Like rushes out of the room and is like, hey, what's going on?
And she's just like, nothing.
Oh, the doves.
Yeah,
the doves. They woke me up. What? I mean, your feet were hanging off the goddamn building.
Right,
I mean, you
exactly.
should say something. So, of course, again, this is where she's kind of lying and saying that there's nothing really going on, but yet there is. Right. I guess there's been something going on the whole time, but she really just hasn't said anything, right? So, of course, she gets a little bit like, this is weird. So, her guardian is like, hey, you're going to be, can you know how to get home? You know how to let yourself in and everything? She's like, sure. I know. Where you going? Well, I got to go to Washington. There's a couple of things your mom didn't do before she left. Oh, okay. Right. So she meets the father at the old house, right?
Right.
You get the airplane shot. Yeah. Right. So they're in Georgetown at the original house, and she's just acting so fucking weird. She's just
weird,
a very, very...
Yeah. She's a weird character all the way around.
And she does even at one point tell the priest or father, she tells him, hey, for the first 2 years, I could not even be near her because it reminded me of how horrible it was. Right. And then she's like, after that, I couldn't stand to be away from her.
I don't feel like complete without being around her, basically.
Right. And this is another like really shitty line because it's funny. There's 2 shitty lines in a row with her.
Movie?
And I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why it's so bad, but it really is. She looks at the father and she tells him, why do I have to feel this way? And he's like, maybe you need to see a priest or a psychiatrist. She looks at him. She's like, I am talking to a priest, aren't I?
Talking to one now,
And he-
aren't I?
Yeah. And he point blank looks at her and is like, I'm not here for you.
Right.
What the fuck was that?
But then he
I mean,
prays
the
for
woman's
her.
like,
Right after
well,
that.
she says, or he's walking up to the room and he says, haven't you thought about praying? She's like, prayer? What? You know she was fucking possessed. And you're not gonna fucking pray?
Right.
What the hell is that? She's like, she scoffs at it. She's like, prayer? Dummy. Prayers for sucks, right? And it's like, no, what the hell? You know that was what was needed.
Right.
So, of course, he goes in there. He sits in front of the bed, prays for Father Marin's soul, his everything like that, right?
Right.
And
even Sharon.
Even Sharon, right? And so they actually do the synchronizer again whenever he comes back. Okay, this is where he starts riding on the wings of a grasshopper, tracing the steps of Father Marin from back in the day. Because Father Marin was back in the Edison days, in the 1800s in Africa.
Right.
Because, of course, Max von Sydow's character, even in the 70s, was like 100 years old or some shit like that, right? I mean, he was fucking old, right?
I don't know if he was 100, but yeah.
Right. But you know what I noticed about the original Exorcist movie that makes sense now, because I know who Pazuzu is. He's the king of the evil spirits of the air. Whenever he first sees the statue of Pazuzu, where the dogs are fighting in the first movie, the wind is blowing like a mofo, right?
Yep.
And there you go.
Yep,
and I did not see that symbolism until I kind of read about who Pazuzu was. Okay, so that makes sense. So Father Marin is basically talking about, in her subconscious, is communicating with both of them and talking about this young boy, that is talented and can heal the sick and can get rid of the locust swarms and everything like that.
With his lasso
right?
move.
Yeah, I mean, he's got like the David and Goliath sling. You know what I mean? It's like woo, 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 woo.
I thought he wanted to be a cowboy.
I don't know. So they're totally like he's warding off these evil grasshoppers because again that's Pazuzu. But what happens is he actually gets possessed by Pazuzu. So Father Marin grabs him, I guess, because he says, I am Pazuzu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. And they start climbing up that cliff that has no stairs
Right.
for like 100 years, right? So while they're climbing up the stairs, he's throwing holy water on the rock for some reason. I don't know. Because Pazuzu's going nuts in Kakumo's body, right? Like really freaking out. The wind is like fucking with people, making them fall and everything like that. And that one dude actually does fall down the cliff.
Right.
And he lands in some weird crack somewhere. And it's like, oh, they get him up to the top. They get Kakumo up to the very top. And Father Marin performs the exorcism. Boom, he's done.
Yep.
So he sees this. So Father Lamont sees all of this, and so does Reagan. She actually does remember because at the very end of it, they're talking, and he's like, do you remember any of it? And she says something like, was it in Africa or something like that? I've seen that place in like the Natural History Museum or some bullshit, right?
That's a weird line right there too, because but you weren't supposed to remember anything, and she's like, I know. Okay.
Again, weird, right?
She just
makes no fucking sense. Right. She's like, I remember everything. What? That's fucked up.
I remember.
So, and she sounds just like she did in The Exorcist, the original one.
Yeah, her voice hadn't really changed. Again, she was only
not
17.
really.
Her balls
So
had
he
not
actually-
Poor
So
Linda
he-
Blair.
She'll never live this one out. She's got to embrace it. So, I mean, in the midst of all of this right here, right? They learn that the boy actually developed some sort of special power from Pazuzu, right?
Yeah.
Or after he is exercised to fight Pazuzu, you know? And then he's like, hey, listen, Cardinal, I have to go to Africa. I have to search this out. And the Cardinal's like, wait a minute, dumbass. You can't do that shit because you were sent there to investigate a death of Father Marin. You're supposed to retreat. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't need to go back to the P.O. box for anything.
Marin
right?
2,
There's nothing
the
in there.
electric boogaloo.
Yeah. So of course he's like, why don't we take the fight to them? And of course the Cardinals, playing Vatican City and shit. And it's like, nah,
like
fuck
you
'em.
better take some time off.
Yeah,
And so he does
you're off
take
this
some
case.
time off and goes
And
to
he
Africa.
actually,
like
right, he actually
boss.
takes a trip to go find Kakumo, right?
Yeah.
Because during that whole little flight scene or weird stuff like that, he actually does ride on the wings of Pazuzu, and they kind of give that first person look of what it would be like to fly on the wings of a demon. I guess, I don't know.
Sure.
Or
at least on the
I
back
mean,
of
he's
a
flying-
grasshopper.
Right. I mean, he's flying through some weird fucking village, and they're all like poking sticks at it and running and falling down and shit.
Well, in this, yeah, you're right. It's like, who are these random folks? But this is like the first where you really get Pazuzu making him say again, like, "Are you sure you want to take this ride?"
Yeah.
Because
Like, you don't want to know who I am.
Well, because he invokes Pazuzu a couple times.
Because she asks him to.
Right.
She says, call me by my real name.
Well, no, I'm
He's
not
like-
even talking about that, but I mean, like, to take that ride.
Right.
Like and then later on he says something about wanting to see something, and Pazuzu's there, and because he says something about God, and then says something to Pazuzu, and Pazuzu makes it happen. Whatever's
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like there's where you feel like he's faltered, and they reference that later
Right.
in the movie.
Well,
So this is
during
the
that
start
whole little
of the fall.
Yeah. During that whole little trip, they actually run into Kakumo, right?
Yeah.
Because Kakumo is wearing a grasshopper
That's what it
hat.
was, to help him find Kakumo.
Yeah,
Kakumo.
it was a grasshopper hat. He runs to the deal, and then James Earl Jones lets out like a fucking like a tiger, like wow, and like scares the shit out of Pazuzu, and he's like, whoa, shit, back off. So that's when Father Lamont gets the idea, I got to go to fucking Africa, So he does defy everything. He does end up in the same town, which is not, I guess it's like supposed to be resembling the gates of hell or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Right. So, I mean, Pazuzu's like chasing people with their kids on their shoulders and shit like that. Like, And then he does a wow, and he's done, right?
And he spits out
They
an
wake up.
idol.
Right.
Or whatever that was.
Whatever the fuck that was. So he kind of learns that Pazuzu attacks the people who have some sort of psychic healing ability.
Yeah.
Just like the woman at the very beginning, just like Reagan does subsequently after one of their sessions. And she goes in there, and the little girl with autism, she stands there and she says something like, what's the matter with you? And she's like, well, the little girl's like, I'm autistic, I'm withdrawn, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, I can
talk.
hear you.
She says, I can't talk.
Yeah. And she's like, well, I can hear you.
But you're talking
She
now.
sounds, yeah, and so she reaches basically inside the little girl's head and brings her voice out. So it's not necessarily a healing thing.
But it is, but she even says to the doctor, she was talking on the inside. I just helped her talk on the outside.
Right, which is a huge misconception about autism too. I like the fact that they brought that out, but yet there's no cure for it.
That's
you know what I mean?
1977 autism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no reason for a cure, you know? But yet she's a healer. So because that little girl at the very beginning was getting bludgeoned in the head with like a octagon, right?
Right.
Getting knocked over, and she sees her. So the girl's mom's like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I got to take her home. So, and even the doctor says, you can't fuck with people's heads. She just acknowledged the fact that Reagan is actually helping. Because Reagan's even like, hey, can I help some more of your students?
Right.
She's like, no, you can't fuck with anybody's head like that. That's fucked up. No. So eventually, Father Lamont actually does find Kakumo. Right. He finds the right place because he stops at some beachside resort somewhere with nothing but nuns, and Ned Beatty shows up, right?
Right.
And he's like, oh, you're searching for such and such city. And he's like, oh, yeah. I know all the religious sites in Africa. Let me take you. While they're in mid-flight, he says, oh, I've been down this way. I've flown this way. He's like, you have? And he's like, yeah, on the wings of a demon.
Right.
And the dude's like, okay.
But you know what happens once the wings brush against you?
Yeah. He's like, that's weird. And they're talking about DDT, and they're talking about all this other stuff. So Again, weird themes, and it actually hits the plane. The poison does hits the plane, and he's washing it off the deal. Guess he lets Father Lamont off at the right place, and he's walking through the city, and he finds, because it like turns to night, and this is where one of the bad sets really kind of is shitty. So he walks into the city, and he's like, Kakumo. And these other dudes show up, and they're like, oh, Kakumo.
Well, he walks into that crowd of dudes, and they're like, yeah, I'll show you Kakumo.
Yeah, we got Kakumo right back here. Follow me. And then they bring out some chick just to fuck with him, right? Titties all hanging out and everything. And they're like, ha, 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 ha.
And he's like, he just jets.
What the fuck? Right? So he ends up in Kakumo's lair, right?
Well,
Kakumo's
he doesn't just
like,
end up there, though. This is where he invokes Pazuzu again to help him find.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So again, now he's gone from praying to God to basically having Pazuzu help him.
Right.
Which is leading him to the dark side.
Which should not happen. Yeah. Because Pazuzu should not be invoked for anything.
Well,
and that's when he shows
of God.
Right. And Kakumo knows this, James Earl Jones. So he ends up in Kakumo's lair or whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, I'm here for a girl, Reagan McNeil. And he's like, well, you invoked Pazuzu. You shouldn't have done that. He's like, if you ask Pazuzu for help, I will spit a lion at him or some shit like that. What?
I think.
Yeah, but if.
Yeah, that is. I think what the actual line was there was, it was if Pazuzu comes after you, because he says, "What if Pazuzu comes after me?" And he's like, "If he does, I'll spit a leopard out, or something like that."
Right.
I will spit a leopard. That's what he says.
And then he tells him too, if you really want to help this girl, you have to believe in God and you have to walk across this shit. Then he spits out a fucking jelly ball or something. I don't know. That slow-mo shot of him spitting, that fucking,
was, super random too. I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah. Some silly putty onto the fucking spikes.
But then he steps onto the spikes and it goes right through his foot. I'm like,
and he falls on top of him.
Right.
Yeah.
But then he really just falls on the ground, and guess who's there?
Kakumo.
But he's
James Earl Jones, the real one.
But he's younger than
right?
the old Kakumo that he ran into, and he's a scientist.
He's still got the lines on his. Yeah, he's got the lines on his face.
He does in his first though, does he? I think they show back up, right? While he's talking to him.
Maybe.
I'll have to watch that piece
again.
again. But
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure that at first he didn't, and then while he's talking to him, they cut back to him, and he does.
Yeah, it kind of like shows up out of the blue. Maybe.
But I thought that was kind of him making the recognition that they were the same person or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he studies
he's like,
grasshoppers.
Yeah, he was like, you were possessed by Pazuzu, and he was like, yeah, that's what my mom told me.
Right.
But he's basically trying to figure out a way to stop grasshoppers from coming through during the rainy seasons and wiping out all the crops. So he has one female or a couple of females or whatever. He's breeding these special ones that instead of becoming a herd mentality or a swarm mentality are causing them to calm so they don't just go crazy.
Right, and he explains that
shit.
when the wings brush each other, that it basically antagonizes the other ones, and then that's what creates the swarm mentality.
Right,
yeah.
and they go crazy
later. There's a lot of stuff about brushing wings.
Yeah, so and he does say that too. He's like, once the wings have brushed you, you can't stop. You know, and you know, so. Again, he's like, okay, well, I need to go visit this place that he sees in the Natural History Museum with her that Father Merrin was at. Was like some church on the cliffs that you have to climb up or some shit like that. Right? So you do get those first person views, you know, from the grasshopper, like chasing off the dudes or like, oh, dropping people and shit like that. Right. So he shows up. He finally gets up to the very, very top. Right. Which that would suck ass. You know what I mean? I mean, the old priest is like, hey, just lower me down. And the other dudes are like, I'll fucking climb up that cliff. I don't give a shit. So he gets all the way up to the top and, you know, he goes into the whole little temple thing. And he's like, I'm not worthy. I need your help. You know, I need to blah, blah, blah. Cause he eats the bread because the bread looks like a child or whatnot. It looks like a paper doll almost.
Baby.
Yeah. And he like drinks all the wine. So I guess there's nobody else wants wine, you know, cause like he chugs that shit.
White people.
And then he's like, he talks to one dude and he's like, hey, did anybody know who Father Merrin was? And he's like, I don't know. I'll ask the abbot or whatnot, the main dude. Like, okay. So the dude's like, yeah, I know Father Merrin. You know, we lost a guy on that day. You know, it was a long time ago. He fell from right here. And he's like, wait a minute. The dude fell from right here. He didn't fall there. He fell over here. Okay. So this is where we get kind of like the back and forth because Reagan and Father Lamont are psychically linked in a weird way. Right. So he climbs down. He's like, oh shit, I know where he's at. So he climbs down to the very bottom. He finds the body, which they haven't found in what, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years. I don't know. Yeah. And he's like, how did you know the body was down here? You know, and he's like, oh, well, because I rode with Pazuzu. He dropped me off over here. You know, he showed me this shit.
Telling him he's a devil worshiper.
Yeah, they're like, Pazuzu? Pazuzu?
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're a fucking Satanist. So they start stoning him to death, which is weird. You know, they hit him the first time, knocks him the fuck out almost.
So, but at the same time, we have Reagan in her big dance number.
Right.
And when he gets hit in the head with the first stone, she like freaks out. And then he starts getting hit by other things as he's running, you know, and they're still throwing stuff at him. And she's like, every time he gets hit, she's like getting hit. And then she falls off the stage and starts having a fit.
And you get to hear the sound of the synchronizer going off. It's like, you The music is really haunting in this, and it was done by Ennio Morricone, and it's just fucking weird that like, the woman screaming the whole time, or the guy screaming. Oh, that's the scariest part of the whole movie, right? So basically, he makes it out of there. She's freaking out. Her guardian is standing there, is like, you can't lock her up anymore. You just can't do that. You need to help her. And of course, the Dr. Tuscan, because at one point, Father Lamont asked her, "Hey, do you got any children?" And she's like, "Yeah, but living alone sucks. And don't you need a woman sometimes?" And Father Lamont's like, "Yeah."
All right,
Well,
all right.
okay. Yeah. Okay. That's weird. So, she's playing in the tub with her kids and everything like that. And, Reagan's all fucked up. She's laying in bed. She actually very easily walks out of the whole hospital, right?
Right.
She walks.
Yeah, she's
pops
walking
that
IV out. She's like, and then one guy somebody even says something, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
Right.
She's like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Yeah. She totally like dupes the woman that was eating the donut at the very beginning. Yeah. She's like, "Where are you going?" "Oh, don't worry about it. I got this." And she's got the Delamo shopping bag, right?
Right.
So she's walking out with the synchronizer and everything. So she's bolted. And Father Lamont shows up. And he's like in his. Where did he get the fucking shirt?
Yeah,
what the hell was he dressed as?
I don't know. Not a priest. He's
like John Travolta priest or some shit like that, like Staying Alive
some
priest.
kind of a weird Hawaiian shirt or something underneath. I don't know what that was.
An African shirt. Maybe his shirt got ruined while he was in Africa, and his safari gear. So basically, he shows up, grabs her. They start kind of going through. It's weird too, because they go to like the shittiest hotel in New York, right? Where people are all around and everything like that. There's like pimps and hustlers outside.
It's like the 2-hour no-tell motel.
Yes. So they go in there, and the first thing that they do is they hop on the synchronizer, right? Boom, got to get into it, right? And at the same time, Dr. Tuscan and Sharon are all like freaked out, right? They're kind of going through everything, like, wait, we can't do this shit. This is fucking weird. They get into another sync ratio thing, which shows a little bit more, and they kind of like leave like right out of the blue, right? But he's possessed in a weird fucking way too. Like, he doesn't answer to her, he doesn't say nothing to her. She just shuts the door.
Isn't that where he sees the vision of Marin?
Yes.
And Marin's like,
and he says,
take care of her.
Yeah, protect her.
Protect her.
You have to do this. But yet he's in a weird trance, in a weird dreamlike state he's like,
just like, we're going. He's leaving.
Yeah.
And she's following, apparently. And they get on a bus.
Yeah. Oh, well, not a bus. They get on a train.
Oh, well, they do get on a train. You're right. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So she's like, "Hey, talk to me." And he's waiting in line to go to Washington or some shit like that, right?
Right.
And she's like, "Hey, talk to me." "Well, let me go hop on the phone real quick." So she's got a quarter somewhere, right? Or a dime or something
probably
like that.
because she had some ruse.
She has some pack rats. So she's talking to the doctor. She's like, "Hey, we're on our way to Washington. The father's not talking to me. This is all weird." And, of course, Sharon's like, "What the fuck?" And Dr. Tuscan's like, what's happening, right? So she has to leave her kids, but Reagan's so polite that she's like, "Well, I gotta go. Goodbye." She doesn't just like hang up the phone and fucking run off, right? She's on the train and everything, and of course the ticket taker is like, he notices her at first. she sits down with him. She's reaching into Father Lamont's pocket, and the dude's like, hey, don't you be doing that. And he's like, no, he had a shot, and he's weird. And
and is that when he turns around?
Yeah, he looks at the ticket taker. She's mine. What? And so Reagan pays for their tickets and everything like that, which I didn't know that was a thing. You can get on a train without paying for your tickets before you get there.
Apparently. Get in where you can
tickets.
Fit in.
So they actually end up back in Georgetown. Then that's when they get on the bus.
So
and the bus
the whole time while they're on the train and the bus, Sharon and Dr. Tuscan are like, they take a taxi and like things are stopping them from getting places. You know what I mean? Like they fly because they're going to fly. They're going to fly to DC, but they get beat by the people on the train and the bus, even though they were in a plane and a taxy, because
they hop in
Pazuzu.
Well, they hop in a taxi from 1950.
Yeah, I saw that. But apparently, like all this stuff that's like stopping them, like that one guy, like there's an accident in front of them, and then they stop, and she's like, "I'm a doctor,"
Yeah, and the dude's like standing out in the middle of the highway, like, "I need a doctor, help me!"
And then
he's banging on their window and shit. Yeah, and then Sharon's like, click, click, and fucking hits the automatic fucking locks, right? Like, they must have called somebody, and he's like, "I need a doctor." So she's like, "I am a doctor," but she's a psychiatrist, so I don't understand.
She had a doctor bag though,
right?
Like
she did.
One. And then when they're on the plane, there's like storms and like shaking and stuff. So like everybody's trying to stop them from getting there, like Pazuzu or God or somebody is.
Yeah, Pazuzu's trying. He's trying his ass off.
I wasn't sure if it was him or like God's like, look, this priest needs some time.
Yeah, hold him back a minute. This guy needs a little bit of time.
But obviously it's Pazuzu, as we find out a little bit later.
Right. So, of course, the stop is at the bottom of the staircase where, the other father passed away, or supposedly did, because, spoiler alert, Exorcist III.
Better movie. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, way better. So basically, they're walking up the stairs. You're going back to the old McNeil house in Georgetown, where the first one took place. And
he opens the door, right, to the bedroom.
Right, but yet it freaks him out because he beats her there, right? Beats her up to the upstairs, everything like that, right? But yeah, he stops at the top level and like falls down. She's like, "What's the matter, Father?" And he just points at the fucking door, like,
Before that happened, doesn't he open the door and all the locusts come out? And then she gets up there, and of course, there's no locusts at that point, really.
No,
and he's
the door shut.
He's like freaking out in the corner, or down the on the next to the wall, pointing like, "Oh."
Yeah, because he gets slammed up against the wall with the locust, like, "Oh,"
which don't get me wrong, would suck.
Yeah, come on, that'd be scary as shit. You're like, "Don't get in my mouth." Ah.
I'd be like, protein, I would just open my mouth.
Soylent Green is people.
Soylent Green is made of Pazuzu. Soylent Green is Pazuzu.
So she opens the door.
Neckerchief.
Oh, that's one thing he didn't have with that fucking weird ass shirt. That shirt was fucking fantastically loud. That thing had its own fucking record. It was so loud.
So this is where we finally get to see the other. Call me by my dream name.
Yeah. So good Reagan opens the door.
I'm good,
right?
Reagan.
And she's
I'm bad, Reagan.
I'm bad Reagan. So she's like, I can't turn away because this is so freaky. So she finally is like, okay, I'm gonna shut the door and get the fuck out of here. But Father Lamont's like, no. He shows up like out of the blue and is like, watch it. Let's go in there. He kind of opens the door and then he starts like fucking like necking with her.
Yeah, well, then he's like, because I think, again, he's invoked Pazuzu so many times at this point, like she's got some power over him, or he, or it, or whatever. I don't assume that demons necessarily have genders, I guess.
Right. But how do you invoke another bodily form at this point? Because there's distinctly two different Reagans.
Right.
There's possessed and evil Reagan,
because here in a
and
minute
there's
we're
good
going to
Reagan.
see bad Reagan roll past her on the stairs.
Right.
Which I thought was great.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's evil me. Get out of here.
Yeah. So of course, Father Lamont's like,
so that necking
kissing
scene,
on her and shit.
That necking scene was supposed to be way worse. And
I can imagine.
Linda Blair's like, I'm 17. No. And they're like,
he's like 52.
And Borman's like, okay. But I guess they kind of
I get it.
Like her and Richard Burton kind of had a father-daughter sort of relationship on set. So it made it super awkward on top of like already being like weird because she's a 17-year-old kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and that was one of the only reasons why Linda Blair actually agreed to do the movie, because she got to work with Richard Burton.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wouldn't want to at that time? I mean, Richard Burton was a badass, right?
Sure.
So we get the whole "she's mine," and Reagan's like, "Father, no." So then he gets into this weird like shoving match with her and starts like knocking her into the window shades or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's like, she's like, "Father, por qué?"
And then while all this is happening, we cut back to Sharon and Dr. Tuscan, who are now in the taxi in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah.
And
they're berating the fucking driver.
Yeah, they're like, hurry up. There's somebody going to die. And then this motherfucker just wrecks in to like the whole front of the building. Not the front of the building, but the courtyard or whatever, through the wall and fence.
That old car was shitty. That's all I got to say. Like 0 on the crash test rating. You know what I mean?
Well, the two people in the back live. But the other guy does not. And again, I am assuming that this is all Pazuzu's powers that are causing this to happen, and causes the wreck.
He's possessing the car or some shit. And even you can hear the dude screaming.
Like, yeah, he's like, nothing's working.
I can't stop it. And they wreck into the front, right? So Dr. Tuscan is in the back, surrounded in barbed wire. Sharon gets out.
Because her
both
door
of them are back there.
Fine.
She opens and crawls out. Yeah. Dr. Tuscan is like surrounded in barbed wire and shit like that, right?
That
because Reagan,
at the top of the fence.
Right. Reagan jumps over the fence and only gets like her shirt caught on the barbed wire.
Well, she's wire. She's a demon possessed ninja.
I guess.
Let's be realistic. It's probably from the tap dancing.
Right. I mean, come on. She tapped it away.
I mean, Gregory Hines could have jumped that.
Oh, shit. Damn. I invoke Gregory Hines. The power of Hines compels you.
He was one of the White Knights, I believe.
He was.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like taking Father Lamont forever to rip her heart out.
Well,
right?
That's kind of rough thing to do.
It is, especially if
heart.
Yeah, with his bare fucking hands too, right?
Yeah.
So everything's going to shit. The whole place is like falling apart.
Floors are falling in. Cracks are happening in the side of the walls.
Yeah, and the bed's falling apart and everything like that. He finally rips the heart out, right? Which is so weird. And so, so Father Lamont finally gets the heart out, but yet Reagan still tries to run for some reason, go down the stairs and everything like that, but she keeps getting stopped. Dr. Tuscan is looking at her like, hey, yo, stop. What the fuck's going on? After Sharon's been, burning for a minute or two.
Yeah, 'cause now she's on like the broken stairs, right?
Right.
And that's when
finally
evil Reagan rolls past her down the stairs.
Right. Yeah, just
great.
like falls down the stairs.
It's me. Get out of my own way here. Hold on. Look at me getting out of my own way like a good person. But then we have all the locusts too, right? Like the locusts are going crazy now.
She has to do the whole Kakumo thing to where she's like slam dancing.
Move,
yeah, she's doing that. Whoa, 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 whoa. The sling move, right?
Yeah.
Where she's basically throwing, the locusts off of their swarming or something.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Basically calms them down.
Right.
Yeah.
She eventually wins and stops them all.
Mm-hmm.
And she does that whole like, I'm doing the swirl look, right?
Right.
So she wins, right? And Father Lamont, he's still alive. He's still kicking, right? Dr. Tuscan is out there just watching, thinking, what the fuck is going on? She comes down after they save the day and everything like that, and Reagan gets to see Sharon for the last time. Sharon's looks like a piece of bacon.
Yeah.
And
she dies.
She's been
very stupidly, just
falls down, right? And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Sharon. I didn't like you anyway." And then they walk off into the sunset.
Yeah. Well, Tuscan tells Lamont to watch over Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just stays there, and then all of a sudden there are 75 people there. The cops right next to her, hey, what did you see? What happened here?
What? So they get they get away. They probably moved to Brazil or some shit, or
and they work out some issue where he's like, so could you put on the makeup again? And
yeah, they moved to Thailand, where it's okay for a 52-year-old man,
52-year-old priest
to date a 14-year-old.
She's 16 in this, man.
So that's it. That's the fucking movie. It totally 100% cancels out the first movie.
100%. Any value the first movie had is gone now as far as being a horror movie. You know what I mean? And this movie was not scary ever. At no point, when I was a kid watching this or to now, was I ever scared watching this movie. Now, again, I think that it does a kind of I won't say a good job, but it builds a different world. It takes it a different direction. And I can see some value in that. But as we've stated several times, it didn't need to be The Exorcist.
Oh,
and this should have been The Exorcist 3.
This should have technically been the Sexorcist or something like that, not The Exorcist. It should have been an entirely different fucking movie.
Yeah,
if you would have marketed this as something else with another sort of demon with a backstory and, like I said, longer, 2.5 hours, to where you have 30 minutes of what the actual movie was and shit, right, or the backstory for everything was, okay, I could see that, but as far as it is now, no. It does not belong in the Exorcist world. Just like Exorcist the beginning just does not belong in the fucking
Never
world.
Saw that. And I won't.
Great, awesome premise. Again, poor execution and horrible special effects.
So out of
The
the
worst.
Exorcist movies, I would say Exorcist 1 is by far the best. Exorcist 3 is the second best.
Yes.
And the rest of them can fuck off. What would you give this out of, five demons, I guess? Your 5 demon bag.
5 Reagan McNeils. I would give this,
5
just the only reason why I would ever give it a 2-star rating is because of the actual idea and the premise behind it. And then the other 3 stars out of 5 are taken away because of execution. That's it.
Yeah.
I think maybe you put this in the hands of somebody else that was better than Borman for it. Now, I'm not saying Borman's a bad director or anything like that. I'm just saying that he wasn't the right director for this movie. You put it into the hands of somebody that could have maybe massaged the script, the story, the characters, gave you a little bit more meat on the bone.
I'll be honest. I would have liked to seen. I think it was William Goodhart was the original writer, right, of the script. I would like to see that original script that got everybody excited to be in the show. You know what I mean? Before it was rewritten 4 more times, 5 more times.
It only got the people that were in it excited for it. Now, Richard Burton was only in it for money.
Right. Well, you know what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah.
Linda Blair even came out and said that, while this movie was no different or very different than what they, originally were going to film, but that the first script was superb. Now I don't know Linda Blair's ability
definition is superb.
Yeah. But obviously it's a whole different movie than what she thought she was going to be making. And I thought it was real creepy of Borman to try to get her to do like a more sexualized scene with Richard Burton.
Well,
but he also did Deliverance. Squeal like a pig, boy.
Yeah, but you do have to take into account that she was stabbing herself in the crotch with a crucifix in the first one.
Right, as you do.
Which was absolutely abhorrent, just fucking crazy. I think with the principal actress that you had, I mean, you had an Academy Award winner in that movie. They could have fucking ruled the screen.
Sure.
There's really, I don't think it's the worst sequel of all time. I don't know what is, but I don't think this is. Maybe the Blair Witch 2, because the Blair Witch 1 sucked as bad. But I would have to say you put this in the hands of somebody that was really dedicated to the material like Borman was, but yet had a more eye for no talking. The dialogue in this was pretty useless. I think that maybe, okay, so if you, and I'm not a director, and I would never claim that I could make it better, but I think for me, if you added more tension to the movie, because there's no tension in this movie, it just hopped from scene to scene to scene, and you were just like, what the fuck's going on?
Right.
If you added more tension and more space, at the right points, instead of just jump, let's get to the end, we're done,
Sure.
You could have built, like you said, that world better. You could have explored it. The music, okay, there is some good score to it, but the music is another detractor from it that makes it really horrible, because sometimes shitty movies with a great score are not that shitty, but you put in Ennio Morricone with that really eerie soundtrack that he's got, plus the Day of the Dead, boom, 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 really happy music, you know what I mean? Right. Which was like, what the fuck? That could only be at the very end, not in the middle of it,
I think.
Yeah, it just.
Yeah. I think for me, like you and I talked a little bit before the show, I think visually the movie looked good. Like it looked like a movie. William Fraker was the cinematographer. He is done. He's been nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, and it was funny that you mentioned tension, because he was also the cinematographer on Rosemary's Baby, which had a great movie for creating tension.
Right.
But again, he wasn't the director. He's just the cinematographer, but he does a good job of making the movie look like a movie, even with some of the shittiest of set design at times. Like, what are these round things, and why do they all have different colors in them? I was like, what is going on here?
Again, if they would have set the whole movie inside that psychiatric ward or whatever it was, cool.
Well, I don't even think it had to be that, but I will also give this, I'll say a 2, because like you said, it's the bones of a good movie that's not an Exorcist movie. I like the cinematographer, because like I said, I thought he made it look like a movie. Nothing on William Borman necessarily, but you're right. There should have been a different director.
He was not the director for this movie.
Exactly.
This was one of those projects that he took on because he believed in it and he saw the potential in it, but he couldn't do it. And I don't know if halfway through it he was like, "Fuck, I can't do this." Most directors won't do that because they have a sense of pride, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, William Wyler or whatnot. Some of the older dudes. The guy that did Gone with the Wind and shit like that, I
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah. You really make this what it was meant to be, and we're talking like a inner, like, how do you say, like a mental movie. You have to make this mental. You have to turn this into a fucking trip. You have to turn it into a mind fuck. This wasn't a mind fuck. It was just like, hey, make your tone go deeper, deeper and deeper. Make your tone match the other tone. It was like, what the fuck is this? It did make sense because they didn't really build on anything. They were just like, hey, you know what this is? Hey,
Sure.
Guess what? We're going to introduce this. And even the father was like, hey, I know what to do.
Right.
What? He's not even a man of science. He was more of a, again, he was a firm believer in the Christ, and he was a firm believer in everything that he did, but yet he just couldn't.
But I think his beliefs got shook there for a while.
Yeah.
And I think you could have played more into that even, depending on how you would have taken the story. You could have delved a little more into that and made that more palpable. And that would have created more tension, I think, at the same time.
Right. The Kakumo character, too. Bullshit.
I probably would have never had that piece happen in the way it happened. That was just ridiculous.
If they did that, okay, it makes sense, is to have more backstory about the woman that killed herself at the very beginning as a healer.
Yeah.
You add that.
Well,
you add Linda Blair healing.
Her saying that she healed kids or something.
You didn't get shit. So how are we supposed to infer that besides what Richard Burton is saying is these people are out there? They've been around us forever. Now we're finally getting to see them. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Give me something.
Well, I feel like when your character really has to explain it.
Yeah. Maybe if they would have started the movie off with a little bit more, instead of being in the midst of an exorcism, more like, hey, this is happening, showing, all hell breaking loose.
I think the biggest thing that this movie suffers from in the direction too is the time jumps, like we mentioned early on, and I think that loses cohesion in the movie a lot. So yeah, I just think it could have been done a lot better. Again, I just don't think I would have ever made this an Exorcist movie.
No,
I'm not happy
no,
about
no,
that.
no.
But yeah,
I think you take the name off of it and you make it into something else. Not had Linda Blair in it.
right. You're not reprising any roles. I mean, I do
Right.
like the connection between the two priests. The idea of the Vatican sending him to go inspect all this stuff that he's done. Pardon me.
Bless you.
I like that idea, but again, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't executed well.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they just screwed with the story way too much.
And I'm not a person to jump on the bandwagon because of all of the negativity that there was against it. I see that it's a bad movie. I see a little bit of merit, like we've talked about. You put in different hands, you try to do this, you massage it a little bit, then you got a better movie, right? Take off the name, The Exorcist II. You don't call it an Exorcist, you call it fucking Kukumo or something. I don't know. And then you really delve into that aspect of these people emerging and having a demonic presence trying to stifle that.
Right.
There you go. And a priest that's like, shit, maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should pay attention. Got it. And a doctor being the other side of it, saying, no, it's all inside
science.
your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they could have played off that a lot more too. I mean, there was some quickness to that happening, and then all of a sudden they were like Team Reagan. You know what I mean?
Right. It just did not. It didn't have just the right anything. And there's probably enough footage to make it better, to give it more of a narrative feeling and not really concentrate on the fucking grasshopper. We really didn't need that, I understand the symbolism and showing that, Pazuzu was basically the swarm of locusts, and once he gets going, he, rips everything apart because he is part of that. But why was Pazuzu chosen to take down these healers? Why was he? Right. Why was it that demon? It didn't have to be. It could have been any fucking other demon, that was against that. But why was he tasked with the possibility of taking down these spiritual warriors? Sure. What for? Well, so again, you leave Pazuzu out, you leave Reagan McNeil out, you still have the priest, you still have the doctor, you still have the story. You draw it out a little bit, add a little bit more backstory to those people. You got a better movie. Way better.
Agreed. And a different Helmer, I think.
Yeah.
And again, keep the great. I think the cinematographer was awesome, and I hate to keep coming back to that, but that dude's done a ton of stuff, from Steve McQueen's Bullet, to Tombstone. I mean, that's like kind of the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was the cinematographer for that. You know what I mean? So it looked great. I just think you needed a different director and someone that wasn't going to continually rewrite the story to fit whatever narrative he was trying to get done. He
liked the idea of what it was, and I think that spurred him into changing and getting into this weird deal. If he would have left it alone, maybe we would have got something else, Yeah. But I mean, it really kind of comes down to Scorsese's saying too. Does great goodness bring upon itself great evil? Okay. That is the premise. Yeah, that is the premise of the fucking movie. But we lost that in that movie. We lost that whole narrative from the very beginning. Because Kukumo was the great goodness.
Well,
right?
Not just
But was Linda Blair?
Yeah, she was, and so was the other, the girl at the beginning. They all three
She
were.
was. Yeah,
three were.
they were, but you didn't really know it. I mean, Reagan didn't have any special powers in the first one.
Nope, but she
You
did
know?
in the second one when she started healing people.
Just weird.
Yeah, it was a strange movie. I got nothing else on this.
I really honestly don't think it was the worst movie, or worst secondary
Or
part
sequel.
2 sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case either. I would have to think about that some more, though, to have an answer. With that,
Well-
I think we're kind of hitting the upper end of our time, my friend. This is longer now than the movie by a shot.
Yeah. I don't think anybody else has deep dove into the the movie like us.
No, I
15
don't
minutes
think
is
so
all
either.
they really give it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But you know what? I again, this is the end of it. I did really take the time to understand why I did not like it, instead of just instead of a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't like the Backstreet Boys, but I've listened to a whole one of their records, so I know why I don't like them. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, well, everybody said it sucked, I'm never gonna fucking touch it. You know? It's like, hey, it's like Halloween 2. It's another one of those. Continued on the same story, but didn't need to.
Right.
Cash grab. They should have made Warner Brothers should have made something else, like Star Wars.
Thank God they didn't.
Whew. It would have turned into this fucking massacre.
Let's rewrite this script.
Over
like the direction you're going, Mr. Lucas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And guess who came out on top?
You would have ended up with what was that movie we watched? One of our space giving movies.
Oh God. Which one?
The one with the robots where they drop the bombs on the planets and the sentient bombs.
What? I'm fucking loaded. I don't get it.
There were sentient bombs. They dropped them to like blow up whole planets that were unstable. There was
Holy
a beach
shit,
ball that was the creature.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. John Carpenter's first movie.
Yes.
I am fucking loaded. I am pretty drunk.
Well, that's all right. You could probably cut about the last 5 or 6 minutes out of this.
We'll leave it in.
Great. Awesome.
But overall, great, just story, shitty movie. I'm not gonna be that contrarian dude to where I'm like, I really like it.
No.
Nah. It's not one of those movies that I'm gonna be like, you know what, I'm gonna watch it another 4 times next week. No,
it was definitely not put together very well. But like you said, there's the bones of a decent story there.
Yeah.
Well,
anybody out there listening, if you have a story about The Exorcist II, if you saw it in the theaters, or if you, for some reason, like it or don't like it, not for the normal reasons, let us know at dropculturepodcast@gmail.com. Drop Culture on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can always reach us at dropculturepodcast@gmail.com. Did I already say that?
You already said that. The other one you were thinking of was dropculture.com, which is the easiest.
Oh man,
that,
I didn't really.
We are out of here.
Later.
Peace.